Welcome back, Purrfect Peeps, to Purrfect.dev. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about SocialBee. And I have SocialBee's co-founders, Ovi and Vlad. Ovi is what is referred to as the chief technical bee, and Vlad is the chief. Sorry, I got those backwards. Let's try that again. Ovi is the chief executive bee, where Vlad is the chief technical bee. And so you'll hear a lot on these little analogies throughout, and that's why I love about SocialBee. They keep it fun and light, and as we talk through it, I think you'll catch on to all the little bee phrases that we can go through. So welcome, guys. How are you?
Thanks for having us. And I just want to say that we would have not got this far with the product if I would have been the chief technical bee. So I'm happy that Vlad fills that role.
No, very cool.
Happy to be here for sure.
Yeah, thanks for joining. So for those on the video side of this, I'm just gonna pop up really quickly kind of what SocialBee Site looks like, and maybe you've stumbled upon it in the past. So here is the SocialBee Site, and it has more leads, less effort. And what it's kind of showing here is social media management tools. And I would say, like, this is. It kind of catches you at first because you're like, whoa, what am I getting into here? And it feels like very amazing and wonderful. And I'm telling you right now, since we've started using it, it absolutely is. So it's taken so many hours away from, allowed back into my time, I should say, for Coding Cat. We basically set up our posts out there, and the RSS feed gets picked up, and it gets placed back into all the different channels. So it's an absolutely amazing product. And because our podcast kind of dives into all things developer related, from both running a startup to the technical aspects, it was awesome to get with you both just to start to talk through kind of what runs SocialBee as a whole. So I'm really excited to pick your brain a little bit on how you guys are running this. I read a little tidbit, and maybe Ovi, I'll throw this one over to you. I read something on kind of why this started. I'm eager to hear, like, did this just pop up out of kind of a need for this in your clients?
Yeah, so actually together with Vlad and actually two other friends of ours, we started another startup before SocialBee, which was an app for quotes from business and personal development books called Nugget. And it was fun to work on that project, but we realized at one point that project was more of a vitamin versus a painkiller. So we did manage to use all sorts of social media techniques to grow it and to get people to use it, but it was hard to get people to get them back and keep using the app once they download it and use it for a few times. But in that process, we managed that we stumbled upon some techniques, some social media techniques to grow our audience, which worked. And in that process, we also started to build some internal tools to help us automate that part. And at one point, we got a few people asking us how we're doing this and how we're growing the social part of things. And we told them about what we were doing in the background. And when we saw that there was some interest, we decided to try to sell what then later became SocialBee. And then from a startup where we had to keep investing and bringing our own savings into Nugget, in SocialBee, we started to see that people are actually willing to pay for that. And then once we realized that, we stopped working on Nugget altogether, and we focused on SocialBee ever since, which was a little over 4.5 years ago.
Oh, that's amazing. So the original product, did it have kind of the same vision, or has it changed and just kind of morphed into its own technology and SaaS platform?
Well, I would say that a lot of the same structure is in there, and a lot of even sometimes functionality is in there. But what has changed is we kept making it easier to use, even better looking as an app, and kept adding more and more functionality in order to save you even more time and to make you even more efficient while using it. And we definitely rewrote the technical platform even a few times, I would say, by now. But at the core, the main feature that we started with, we still have them, and we still are relying on them.
Very cool. I'd love to talk. So, just from a high level for people that haven't used the product before, can you just talk through some of the integrations and how difficult it's been to like become an Instagram partner? And we can probably talk about that then, because that's something that's kind of coming up soon, hopefully. Just talk through like how you started to break down every social platform and be able to link into that. And if we get too technical, maybe Vlad, you can step into that too.
Yeah, for sure. So actually, the Instagram integration is now live since yesterday. So we haven't yet promoted it on our newsletter, but we did put up a changelog, and people have started to using the direct Instagram posting.
Awesome.
Again, Vlad and the technical team, they were quite fast in implementing this. So we were able to get this live quite soon after we got access to the Instagram API. But indeed, basically, the core functionality that we have is about sharing your content across different or all of your major social networks. And one thing which makes us different from other platforms out there is that you can actually create content categories for your content and then add them into these like content buckets and schedule with content buckets in mind. And this way you will have a better mix of content across your social profiles. And it will also take you less time because you just need to make sure that these buckets are filled with content. And even more so, we can even recycle your best evergreen content. So for example, your blog posts or your podcasts actually, in your case, are relevant today as they will be a few months or even years from now. So you can just keep recycling them in these content categories.
Yeah, very cool. So I guess for people on the video side of this, I'm just going to share and we can kind of talk through when you first get into SocialBee, essentially what we're talking about is connecting out all of your different social media accounts and platforms that you need to link out to. And once you do that, what Ovi's kind of talking about is this, I always call it bucket. I like the categories. I should really pay attention to the titles. So these different categories that are out here, for instance, we have our blog. And one way to get items into your blog is to manually do it. I believe by clicking add post. I very rarely use that functionality, but the most powerful function for us is that all of our content for our blogs come out as an RSS feed. So SocialBee is able to just directly sync up to our feed and pull those in. Do you find people are often adding posts directly within SocialBee, or they're using this RSS feed setup?
I would say it's a combination of both. So the RSS functionality is one which somehow we had from the beginning, but it was definitely much more clunky. But we do have people who just have their own posts that they really want to tailor, and they have custom images and whatnot. But then a lot of them are also using the RSS functionality because it's quite versatile. So you can connect your own RSS feeds, but you can also connect RSS feeds of other websites that you might want to share content from. And you can even create those posts which are automatically created when a new item shows up in the feed to mention the owner of that website, for example, or to put some specific hashtags next to it. Or if you want, you can add the post as not approved. So that way you can just go in from time to time and just approve the post that you like, maybe change the commentary a bit so it's more custom to you, and then share it that way. So those are two quite different ways of adding content, but both of them are very powerful in their own ways.
Either way, if you just would like a bit of numbers to say so, I would say at least at the end of the year, when we did the last pack of stats for the last year, it was somewhere around 60% of the content being brought in through RSS. So that's it's a big portion of the content. But then again, as Ovi said, I think that many people also like to edit their content. So basically how many people do it is just bring in content through RSS and then just go in and edit it and make it as they feel they should.
Yeah, I love being able to like put it into a draft state or an unpublished state and then tweak it as we need to, especially when I start using other external sites. So we tend, and I haven't done this for a little while, we used to pull in like all of the Angular updates and React updates and things like that so that our users know what's happening and they don't have to go to all these other sources for information to stay up to date with like the web and what's happening. Yeah, so I like those stats, Vlad. Can we dive a little more on the technology side since I have you front and center again?
Yeah, for sure.
What cloud infrastructure are you guys running off of now?
Yeah, so since the beginning, we've been on AWS. So that's mainly what we've been using. We do use some other providers for small stuff, but in general, it's AWS. So whatever we have, we use as a service from them. So it's the main platform. Basically, starting from the database, which we have either a NoSQL version or a relational database. Both of them are in AWS. Then we have application containers, for example, that we're using with EC2. A CloudFormation for the whole scaling part. What else? We have Lambda functions. We have a ton of stuff. So it depends quite a lot. Even all the content is stored in an S3, so a simple storage service from AWS. So
I was gonna ask you about the storage side of that. So it seems like when we load up our own individual images, it seems like that is stored within SocialBee's platform. But often, like that RSS feed, typically that's it's an image that's located somewhere else on a server, and it's usually in the meta information where that comes through. So do you also store those images so you can reuse them later, or is it only the ones that you upload to SocialBee?
No, we actually always store the images for many reasons. I think one of the most important ones is that you might want to reuse them at some point, so then it is easier to manage them like that. It's basically a way to, whatever you give to SocialBee, it will store it in your specific bucket in S3, and then it will be served back to a CDN so that it comes as fast as possible back to you. That's also another thing. And of course, the social networks will want to pick up your media as soon as possible. So that's another thing. So when you're pushing an image, it's important to do it as fast as possible within the process because of the whole scheduling engine and stuff like that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, very cool. I guess if you don't mind me asking, are you using just CloudFormation out of the box, or are you using some sort of tool for infrastructure as code to set all of this up?
Yeah, basically we use Elastic Beanstalk, which is a product given by AWS. So it helps you set up the containers and everything, and then it also helps managing the load balancers and whatnot, whatever you need to set up the scaling. So it's a managed service on top of the CloudFormation.
Cool. I think I noticed you're running a Preact WordPress front end for the media site, and then the actual application appears to be the original AngularJS, not Angular 2, correct?
Yes. For the blog, actually, it's a plugin that we're using to build the website itself. So we use Elementor for that. So basically this is where it comes up from, and also a caching plugin that seems really strong on serving all the content from the server. So probably this is why it looks like Preact. I'm not sure, to be honest. I would have to recheck. But yeah, for the app, it's AngularJS, because mostly when we started up, it was 2016, and back then Angular 2 was in beta. Yep. And at least from my point of view, because of the fact that I've been a backend developer for most of the years, I think that I almost never go for beta versions, especially when you're doing a production release. So AngularJS was the one that we chose. And afterwards, of course, you probably have seen it in a ton of products. Just bumping up versions is never easy, especially with AngularJS. It would have been a bit of a pain. But then again, probably towards the end of the year or next year, we will upgrade.
That'll be interesting to see you go through that. So I don't know if you've checked it out or not, but I'm part of the AWS community builders, and Amazon has a product called Amplify. So if you're ever interested in kind of chatting through how that works and setting up a lot of that infrastructure, just let me know. I'd love to have you back on and we can talk some more about it. Very cool.
Definitely, especially when we start looking into how to go next. Definitely, I would.
Awesome. Yeah. The other piece. So you talked a lot about some EC2s and kind of some Lambdas floating around. Have you embraced somewhat of that serverless technology as SocialBee goes? And actually, let me show something before you answer that question. It might resonate for people a little better. So I have this site up here. Another important aspect to SocialBee is this schedule setup. So it's not just like creating your schedules like we have here, that's fairly easy. You could probably store that in Dynamo and have that kind of scheduled out for everyone. But the hard part in my mind, or the interesting part in my mind is, sorry about that, is how do you actually run like the cron jobs, or what's like triggering those scheduling moments for you guys?
Yeah, that was probably one of the core problems that we had to solve throughout time. Of course, we started out with framework technologies. For example, in the backend, we're using a Java-based framework, which is called Spring. It's probably the most popular one out there. So when you use this kind of frameworks, you also get to make quite limited choices that are, they're production proof, so you can take them and push them out somewhere. And because of that, we chose, for example, a scheduling engine, which is called Quartz. It's also quite popular from many points of view. So one of my first initial questions is how would it be able to deal with the big load, and how much would you be able to scale? But at all points, I knew that on top of Quartz, there is another technology that you can use at some point when the going gets tough, to say so. So basically, we started using Quartz, and we've been using it ever since. And we didn't have to get to the higher tier yet, but we're closing in, to say so. So probably we'll have to get there at some point. So basically, the scheduling engine, what it does is it stores whatever data it needs to trigger the jobs. It stores it in a relational database, and basically it deals itself with triggering whatever needs to be triggered. So probably one of the main challenges is how far would you go in dividing those jobs, and what is the best balance between having many jobs or less jobs or stuff like that. So probably that was one of the most fine-tuning aspects that we needed to look into. And of course, on top of that, when you have a scheduling engine that's running like crazy, then you need to be able to stabilize it somehow. So basically, you don't want to have long-running jobs, because of course it would get your servers into big trouble. So basically, because of this, we're actually using the scheduling engine just to trigger stuff, and then we're using queues to process whatever needed.
Oh, okay. So those are like SQS queues that you're using after that, or?
No, just simple executor queues for now.
Oh,
gotcha. Whenever we get to the point, it can very easily be moved to the next part.
Yeah, that'll be interesting as you continue your journey and as you guys continue to grow, to see if you end up more towards like the serverless methodology within the AWS and start to pull some of those like Java engine-y things directly back into Lambdas and things in AWS itself. So that'll be exciting. We'll have to keep up on that journey.
Yeah, for sure. And we've already looked for options, and indeed, this is one of the best way to process data, for sure. It only depends, or it mainly depends on the business case which you have, for example, and then of course you get to make probably better choices once you know what you want to do. But yeah, it's we've already faced a lot of challenges with this, and it's probably one of the most important parts because as you can imagine, another thing that, for example, is quite specific to social media platforms, people will usually choose to post at fixed hours, for example, like .00 on the 0 on the minute on the 30 or stuff like that. So then you would get your peaks around those times. So you would need to be able to process a lot within a very short period amount of time. And of course, you can afford delays, 1, 2, 3, or 5 minutes. But after 5 minutes, then another post might come up. So it's not a very good idea to postpone them a lot. So yeah, we've had a fair share of challenges.
Yeah, I could see that. Like, definitely when you want to be the first to all the platforms coming out there, you don't want any other people coming in and bottlenecking that service and getting out through it first. You want to be the first to announce that Tom Brady won the Super Bowl. You know, that's very cool. I probably have to block that out. I think that's some sort of crazy copyright. I always forget. So we talked a little bit about, creating a schedule, creating content, how you fill that content in, and then the last piece in my mind is the API side to this. So you guys are dealing with Twitter's API, Facebook's API, LinkedIn's API, and now it sounds like Instagram's brand new API that was released. So can you talk through challenges on keeping up with all of those API requirements and how you actually make those calls?
Yeah, for sure. And just a small note before I start into this. While it sounds like it might be a lot or not that much, either way, for some people it might be not that much. I just looked because I was looking into this earlier. We probably have somewhere around already 20 integrations because while we do have the major networks, then on top of it, of course, we have the integration with Buffer, Hootsuite, or whatnot. And aside from this, we have a lot of shortening providers, for example, so you can create shortlinks directly from SocialBee. So in the end, we're close to 20 already. So of course, one of the challenges when you integrate with a lot of APIs is that you need a lot of firepower to keep up with everything. So that's definitely one of the challenges, just to actually be able to make the changes, blah blah, and so on. But then next to it, of course, the product also needs to develop in time. So you need to have new features and you need to have new stuff. So APIs are one of the things that you have them, they're working, and you would like to have them working for as much as possible so that you can focus on something else. But yeah, with the major social networks, I'd say they change a lot. Yeah, of course, they iterate a lot, but they also take care of being backwards compatible in many ways. So they like to delay things as much as possible. However, depending on whatever else happens in the world, for example, the case of Facebook or whatnot, certain restrictions do appear within the network, right? So for most of them, they try to deal with them themselves, but for other, they would push this on the third-party provider, so whoever integrates. Like for example, with Twitter and evergreen content, that was one of the big issues that we needed to respond quite fast in order to maintain access. So not being able to post the same content again, we needed to provide an alternative for that, and a working alternative that would be suitable for marketing practices or stuff like that. Then there are some moments when you need to actually change quite a lot because of that. So that can be a challenge indeed. But other than that, I would say the big networks are easy from many points of view. So they're quite predictable. You never go on, I don't know, not understanding something, or something would be a challenge from this point of view. Rather, getting access to the networks, then that's a totally different topic. So for us, for example, it took, you can see, 4.5 years to get access to Instagram. So that's probably the longest up until now. And then I think LinkedIn probably was it with company access and whatever else we need. It was probably 2.5 years.
And actually, the longest one that we still have is Pinterest, where We can post on Pinterest through some integrations, but not directly because they haven't opened up that API access. And I think actually what happened is that when we first started out, it wasn't that hard to get access to all of these APIs, but then the whole Cambridge Analytica fiasco happened. And then since then, everybody gated up and had much more direct review processes, which, Vlad, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we were first starting out, we didn't have to go through such complex review processes for the APIs as we do now, right?
Yeah, indeed. So one of the biggest changes within the social networks were the fact that they actually started reviewing the business behind the integration. So I think that's one of the biggest things. So basically, even with Facebook, for example, it was the first time we had to sign anything, for example, with an integration third party or whatever. So it felt quite a lot. And then the review itself, they visited the website. They had questions. They've done a lot of stuff, especially if you use a lot of features like we do, for example, because you can also post on groups and you can do a lot of stuff that we have analytics, for example, that we show in the app. So then, of course, you need to show what you do with your data. Each network has a different set of rules, for example, in terms of service. For some of them, you are not allowed to put the same analytics from different networks, for example, on the same page or stuff like that. So you need to take into account certain things.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think I've read some of that. I didn't even think through like how that would impact you guys. That's interesting.
Yeah, for now, at least, as you can see it in the app, all the analytics are individual per profile. So in this case, you don't have them on a side-by-side basis or something like that. Yeah.
Yep, I wouldn't even have thought about that. That's interesting. I probably would have put a feature request in. I want to see this all in one, and you're like, no, you can't because of them. That makes more sense. How many, like, roughly, with all of your users, and maybe you don't have this number, I sure you do. You guys have tons of analytics. Out of all of that, like, how many API calls do you make in a given month, let's say? Is it in the millions, I would imagine?
So you mean to the social networks?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you just refer to the action of posting, so doing a post, then it's in the millions. Yeah, but if you refer to the whole thing, like including analytics and getting profiles and doing synchronizations and stuff like that, then it's definitely in the tens of millions.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. Wow. I imagine that comes with a little bit of a cost, so that's always fun to offset.
Yeah, I think for us at least, it was especially because SocialBee grew very organically throughout time. So within 4.5 years. At first, we didn't care, to be honest. So because you can do whatever you want, it's going to be $100 or whatever, 500, or at the end of the month, that's fine. But then throughout time, you get to actually look into, okay, do I want to reserve an instance? Do I want to do something like that? So then we can cut some costs and But in the end, I think we're quite satisfied with the costs. Operational wise, it's for now at least it's far below the industry standards for operational costs, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's well worth it. Like I said, you guys save so many hours out of my day trying to bounce between different networks to get things out there. It's totally worth what I pay. So, kind of on that note, I'd like to get Ovi's kind of impression of this. When we talk about like schedules and things like that, my biggest hesitation at first, and I think I'm starting to get my head around this, but I don't have a marketing background. I'm starting to because of trying to grow Coding Cat, similar to how you guys grew SocialBee, just organically and pushing out there and not buying a ton of advertising or anything like that. I started to like only put like a blog out one time because I'm like I feel gross like keep throwing this at people. But can you talk through like the social the mind behind social media and like that kind of reposting or that evergreen cycle a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think maybe this is one of the biggest preconceptions that a lot of our users have when it comes to recycling their evergreen content. And it comes from a few aspects. I think the main one is that you know everything that you're sharing on your social profiles and you know all of the content. and then you assume that everybody will know that as well, and that they will care that that they might see the same post twice.
Yeah.
But actually, in reality, a few things happen. One, if you have enough content, even if you recycle it, by the time that post will hit again your social networks, it will pass, some weeks or even months might pass. And then also, when you're only dealing about organic social, as probably you know, the rates of which in which the posts are seen by your followers keep dropping. So not everybody will see all of the posts that you're posting anyway. And then there's one more thing. Once you create some content which you know is good and you're proud of, and once you have a service or a product that you want to promote that you know is good and would actually benefit your customers, then basically you're just doing them, you're not doing them a service but a disservice by not promoting that and by not sharing that piece of content or that podcast or that product that you have, because at the end of the day, you know that will bring a positive result in their life. So then you should make sure that you do that. But now we also realize that social media keeps evolving and keeps changing, and people don't want to share the just one piece of content over and over and share it with the same exact post. So this is why some time ago, maybe 1 year or maybe a bit more ago, we actually started to create also post variations. So what this means is that, for example, for one podcast interview, which is going to just sit on one link, you can create different messages. So then each time when we recycle or when we post that content, the next message will go in line. And then if you want, once we get to the last one, we can still jump to the first one to keep recycling that content. But this is a way to get get more out of the content that you're producing, be that a blog post or a podcast episode, or maybe just even sharing your homepage or a features page or whatever, but still keeping it fresh with this addition of the variations, and all in the same time for you to not have to spend a lot of time to create that post over and over again. Because one of the main things how we can actually help is by helping you to batch the content creation aspect. So for sure, there's the RSS feed where it just works. You set it up once and it just works automatically. But if you want to have your own content that you create, maybe even with some images and so on, then it's so much easier once you just publish a blog post to come up with 5 ways to write some social posts about that blog post. Maybe you take the title in one, maybe you have a pull-out quote in another one, maybe you create like an image for another one, and then maybe if it's a YouTube video as well, you can embed that and so on. And if you do it all in one go, then it will save you a lot of time. And again, your users, first of all, don't see everything that you're posting because of how organic rates have been dropping. Second, they won't remember. Trust me, like I'm sure that even if I show you some of your own posts from 3 months ago, you will say, who wrote this? I have no memory of that. Or
I've run into that.
Yeah, exactly. Or that might be just me because I'm notoriously bad with memory. And then again, as you are sharing something valuable, you shouldn't worry even if somebody who has a perfect memory remembers that you shared the exact post 1 month ago or 3 months ago or whatever.
Yeah, that's really amazing and powerful. That is not something I'm glad we're talking about it, because it's not something that I've looked into doing. And to me, someone who has such a small amount of content that I have, it would be very beneficial, probably even for me, to remove the RSS feed portion and actually set that up with all of those different variants and just call out, like if we have a really long tutorial or something, say, have you ever seen this code snippet? And like just put that out in many different flavors that go through the tutorial. So really got my my mind spinning on that one. So that's really cool.
I think RSS is also very good there just to have your basics covered. So even if you don't have that time to create those posts, the RSS is going to be there to take care of the important part, which is sharing the new content. But then you can even use the RSS as not approved as a trigger for you to create these variations on that same post. So I think it depends on your own workflow, and whoever decides to use it, they have their own way of doing things. What we've been trying to do is to, first of all, give you a lot of tools to be able to be quite versatile. And what we've been also working on a lot lately is to make those tools as simple as possible, so then it doesn't overwhelm you.
Yeah, and just to add up on that, one of the biggest things that we've also done last year, I think, is provide an integration with Zapier, for example, especially for these cases when people are more tech-oriented, for example, and they want to actually build something that would have nothing to do with an actual RSS that, for example, becomes limited in many ways if you just use it from a WordPress blog or whatever. So then again, with Zapier, a whole world comes up, right? So you can either use spreadsheets, for example, and just then have them be pushed to SocialBee. You can use Slack or whatever. So you can use whatever integration you want. And even if you want to use RSS, for example, Zapier has a way of building an RSS, right? So you can actually build your own RSS feed as you would like it to be. So then you can do also what Ovi was talking about. Depends quite a lot on how do you want to integrate things. Yeah, definitely.
That's actually a really good point. And one of my questions that I initially had, and I totally forgotten about, as a developer myself, I would love to get out of the Zapier world. Is there an API into SocialBee that I could start to utilize so that when I do this major rewrite that we're going through right now for Next.js, as we create a post, I'd rather just have my own microservice Lambda in the back end say, hey, SocialBee, here's a new thing. And I could put all those variations in there already with the content that we're writing, and I could put multiple images and like all of that stuff at once without having to go through a whole third party for it. Is that something you have or will have in the future?
Yes, for sure. So for sure, I can say that we'll have a public API. I think that having a public API opens up so many doors within the ecosystem. So you build something around yourself. So that's already a major plus that you could have as a SaaS. So we already do have an API, and that's being used, for example, by Zapier or some of our partners and stuff like that. But it's a limited API to say so. Basically, you can get the workspaces, the categories, for example. And then you can add a post within a category from a specific workspace, right? So you can select for which social profiles it will be added, setting up expired times, for example, adding an image or stuff like that. However, the reason why we didn't make it public, or the main reason why we didn't make it public up until now, is the fact that, first of all, you need to rate limited somehow, so you need to protect the whole system. That's one of the things. So we would also need to have a way to make sure that everything will stay as it should within the content part, for example, of the app, so the part of where not necessarily you wouldn't like to police, for example, the API, but you would need to make sure that, for example, you review some of them and you do some stuff, and we wouldn't have had up until now the actual availability to do so. So that's one of the parts. And the other one is, of course, when you publish an API too soon, at least from my point of view, so it's not for everybody, and it's not mature enough, and you have to change it every now and then, like every couple of weeks, then people will definitely not like it. So everybody invests a lot of time in development, so you wouldn't want to do that. But I think that now, for example, especially with the latest change where we moved, for example, the evergreen versus share one switch, from category level we've put into item level. That's probably one of the biggest changes that we've had recently. Then definitely we're already at a place where we can start opening up the APIs.
Yeah, that would be really amazing. Put me on that beta list. However we get there.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So I think we covered all the questions that I had laid out. Are you guys wanting to say anything else about this amazing platform that you've created that I'm totally just missing?
I think one thing when we talked about, and this is not my part, but when we talked about the integrations and how hard it is to maintain them, I think one major one where we have to put a lot of effort sometimes just to stay in the same place is the mobile apps. because we also have mobile apps for iOS and Android. It's more for the reminders part for some of the networks. But then that's also a hassle to keep maintaining. And also, what I wanted to say when we were talking about the Quartz and the scheduling system is that I couldn't tell you exactly what happened, but I know that Vlad rebuilt that engine while we were flying the plane at one point, and basically had to redo that part. And one thing which I'm quite happy with how the tech part is going with SocialBee is that we had very little downtimes except for the scheduled ones throughout this 4.5 years. So I don't know exactly what magic Vlad and the team is doing there, but it's working.
You said the team right at the very end there. Something I meant to ask you. I'm familiar, and we'll get into it in my pick, the Concierge side and your team. But how large is your development team? How many people does it take to keep this thing up and going?
Well, I think on average throughout time, it was usually around 2 FTEs, so two full-time full-time people. Now we're closing in on 3, I think. So what happens is that first of all, you have to maintain the whole system, and then on top of it, you have to keep adding new things. So the more we grew, the more features we had in SocialBee. Like, for example, analytics has its own life now. For example, it's a whole project. The API itself again. Then we have the mobile app. Then we have the main app, so the website that you can use. So this requires a lot of focus. But yeah, I think that's probably a speed that we want to use, considering what we want to bring as features and stuff like that. And also, yeah, of course, development usually is quite a costly affair.
Yeah. Do you ever see, and I don't know if for both of you, kind of bringing in some venture capital and trying to grow even faster, or is this you like the pace that you're at and you just want to continue to get this organic growth and keep moving?
I think at least for me, this is always a back and forth between these two extremes. On one side, I always want to do more and faster. But then on the other side, the organic growth has been good for us. We managed to not have any major issues. We managed to keep improving the platform and the marketing and everything that we've been doing. But then again, for these next 5 years, we also have some very big plans, which you will also hear about in the upcoming months. So the whole getting an investor on board question keeps popping up from time to time. And what I can say is that even if we would bring on an investor, it would have to be somebody that we're really in sync with, and we can see it as a very good relationship for the next few years, and to keep helping each other.
Yeah, that's really neat. It's a great story that you guys have. As I'm building out Coding Cat, I keep going through this same mind, like, how do I go faster? And then how do I not lose it too? Like, I don't know how much money I want to invite in, type of thing. So it's kind of a fun process to think through. If you haven't checked out, Guy Raz has How I Built This. They talk about it all the time on that podcast. It's a really good listen. So cool. Well, those are all the main questions. At the very end of every podcast, we like to do what we call Purrfect Picks. And I believe, Ovi, you have the first one. So let me bring that up.
I think this is probably Vlad's.
Yeah,
even though I just
I have
finished,
backwards. Hang on.
Even though I just finished the last season and I love it as well.
There you go. That's your pick. My bad.
Yes. So indeed, my pick is the show Billions, and it's the only one that, even though you cannot find it on Netflix, I try to find it in other ways because I really love it. And I know also a bit about the background of how it was created and so on, and I know that it's based on a lot of maybe even not sometimes VCs or investors, but it's like a mix of multiple characteristics of that. And I think it opens a view into a world which is foreign for maybe most of us, like the whole billionaire world. but it's quite an entertaining show. But for me, it's also inspiring. So that's why I think it's one of the few shows which I finished watching and then I started watching it again. And I definitely recommend it to whoever is into the business part of things as well. But it's also quite an entertaining show. So even for that part, I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's a really amazing show. I love almost everything Sorkin does. So it's really cool to watch Bobby Axelrod go through all his crazy times. And there's some fun dramatic pieces to that too.
Yes.
Cool. Vlad, I think I have yours up for the crown.
Yeah, for me, for example, it was a tie. So what I actually do, and I have some background time for whatever. It's apparently it's not on Netflix anymore since the 1st of January for us here in Romania. But Friends, for example, it's my perfect one that I would look. So it was a tie for me between putting that one and just putting The Crown. The Crown, I simply just love it. It's high quality drama from my point of view. So if you want to look at that, definitely it will pick up all your time then, because it also has a lot of seasons and you have a lot of time to look at it. But yeah, I find it that initially I would have expected to be so boring, but in the end it's jam-packed with whatever you need. So yeah.
This was my wife's absolute obsession, so I can feel it for you. I caught bits and pieces of it, but I'm usually down in the lab, if you will, coding or working on something for Coding Cat. So that's kind of funny. You mentioned France and Romania. I should probably know this. Where is SocialBee actually headquartered out of?
Yeah. So Ovi, go ahead if you want to say.
Yeah. Basically. We are headquartered in Cluj-Napoca, which is like the heart of Transylvania.
Wow. Okay.
So it's also quite late for us. But I'm actually myself. I'm in Frankfurt. Vlad is in Cluj, and most of the team is in Cluj. But now, obviously, because of Corona, everybody is working remote from home. Yep. So we also gave up our office because I have no idea when it's going to be safe again for all of us to be back into an office. So everybody's now working remotely from home.
That's incredible. I love Frankfurt, by the way. I haven't been over there in a few years, but absolutely beautiful. Yes. I have not made it into Transylvania. That's exciting.
That's also worth exploring.
Yeah,
for sure. We'll have to get over there. We did our river cruise kind of through the Danube over in Europe the last time, so maybe we'll keep sneaking further east.
Nice.
So I have a couple picks, and they're very much SocialBee oriented. So the first one is the SocialBee Concierge service, which is why there's some confusion in my mind with like where you're headquartered, because when I was working with some of your concierge service, I believe she was in, I thought it was West Coast on the US somewhere. So
it was on the East Coast, probably. East Coast. Yes.
Okay. So you have a concierge service which helps you both author different things and as well as kind of your whole media strategy and setup into SocialBee. I'm not doing this justice, so maybe I'll give it to Ovi to like actually sell this a little more, because I think it's an absolutely amazing service for someone getting started.
Yeah, so I think just you using this without us knowing each other before, that also does the selling per se. But indeed, besides the tool, which Alex, you showed a bit of the tool throughout this interview as well, we also have these concierge services. And this actually came as historically, we stumbled upon these concierge services, let's say so. But we realized that people not only need the tools, but also sometimes need help with creating the content that should go into the different content buckets, or creating content for their blog, or helping them grow an audience and so on. And what we realized is that marketing, you can think about marketing like you would building a house. You need an architect, but then you also need a lot of building blocks to create that house. And with these concierge services, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to create and to sell some of these building blocks that you can then use in your marketing activities. And we have basically they're like processes process-driven services. So we have a lot of processes in the background. We have a lot of trainings in the background. We have a lot of technology, even in SocialBee, that you cannot see as a user, but we have it in our background to be able to help manage hundreds and hundreds of customers with these concierge services. And that's how we can also get the prices relatively low. And basically, for example, if you want to create posts for social media, but you don't know what type of post or don't have time to do it, we have a service for that. If you want blog posts for your blog, we also have a service for that. And then we keep adding more and more services, but it's always this very productized services, very specific. And then because of that, we can also offer them at a relatively low cost.
Yeah, very cool. So my other pick, and sorry you had to talk for one of my picks so much, but my other pick is the talk you're about to do. So not only are we talking about SocialBee right now, but you're going on to talk during a software as a service summit, essentially all about SocialBee all over again, and kind of with that whole community that has SaaS products with it. So I'm really excited. I signed up. I threw it to everyone I knew because I think SocialBee is an amazing product, and I really appreciate you guys coming on and talking about it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And actually, the talk is going to be very, very, very briefly about SocialBee, but it's going to be more about what other SaaS providers are doing on their social. And let me say, I'm really honored to be part of that summit because the lineup is really amazing, like really top people in the SaaS space. And I'm also looking forward to attending some of the talks during that summit. So I definitely urge anybody who is in the SaaS space to join because there's going to be a lot of knowledge going around.
Yeah, there looks like, just from kind of some of the speakers in here, just an amazing group that you'll be with. And I think it's very much deservedly so that you're in there. So congrats.
Thank you.
Awesome. So again, thank you both so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I want to have you on again so I can continue to follow your journey and that others can continue to follow. And as they find out more about SocialBee and can kind of start their own brands and start their startup businesses, they can have this approach and have a little bit of a kickstart, I hope, as they get moving. So thank you so much again.
Thank you.
And good evening for you guys, right? Oh,
yes.
Wait. Thank you. Take care.
I guess.